Hello, my name is Sara Arrhusius, and you're watching the Permanent Rain Press.
Hi everyone, it's Chloe with the Permanent Rain Press, and today I am so excited to be joined by Sara Arrhusius. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. I'm so happy to be here.
I'm really excited to have you because you are our Young Royals guest number 15 in our interview series.
Yeah, that's so wow. Yeah, you have been. Yeah, I'm so good. Like we spoke about before. Like I'm so excited to be part of this, and I'm so happy you guys have been looking into our process and asking us such brilliant questions. Mm.
Well, we are so happy to be doing it and happy that everyone's been taking the time. I know with you, a lot of people are curious about your work as an IC, which we will get into. So let's start with your background in the performing arts. Like, when did that spark first start for you?
I think that was actually like when I was maybe 19, 20. And I remember telling myself, next lifetime, I'm going to be a dancer. And I heard my own thought and I thought, I'm just 20, right? Okay, let's try this out. So I got engaged in the urban dance community in Stockholm, basically, and that grew into many directions. Since I've been working as an assistant director and a dramaturg, and slowly moving into the intimacy coordinator role. Mm, yeah.
So prior to doing intimacy coordinator work full time, you worked as a script advisor, a story editor, an assistant director. So when did you decide, I really want to go all in with IC, and what kind of led you to this career path?
Yeah, I think that it felt like a given from the start. I came into contact with the intimacy coordinator through coordinating through an intimacy coordinator called Ita O'Brien, who is, I would say, one of the pioneers in the field. And I got it felt it just felt like all the different qualities that I have had and qualifications that I had fit into this role, and it sparked that kind of joy in me. So I decided to go through the list of qualifications that an intimacy coordinator should have, and I started ticking those boxes. And then I got my first project, and yeah, we're just two intimacy coordinators in Sweden now, so we're still kind of expanding and developing. But yeah, for me it felt like a given from the start.
So when did you meet Ita? Like, how did that kind of connection first happen where you met her and then you were like, oh, intimacy coordination, it's an actual job that I can do?
Yeah, that was in the beginning of 2019. We had a seminar in the north of Sweden for the performing arts community. It's called the Biennale or Scenkonstbiennalen. So we had a seminar there basically on this work and how it was developing. So that's how it happened. That's how I came in contact with Ita. Mm.
It must be scary to join a field that's still so new and establishing itself. Like, did you ever have worries about that?
Yeah, definitely, definitely. That's such a good question. It's an enormous responsibility, and I think that without the people that I've had in my surrounding, I wouldn't have made it. Like I've had a good bunch of informal mentors in these last 3 years, including the directors of Young Royals. Actually, both Roshta and Erika have been, they have been without. I don't even know if they know it, but they have been huge support systems for me. I've been very inspired by them as people and as leaders. Ifra Santesson, another one. So there's many who have contributed.
At the same time, it must be exciting to know that you can be a part of that push and that change, although it is still a profession that's still slowly becoming an industry standard. But we talked about mentors. You've mentioned the importance of having one, especially early on as an IC and in your first project. So tell me a bit about like mentorship in this space and why it is so crucial.
I think it is partly because it's so complex and because it's a new role. So, over these last 3 years, since I've been, when I first started, the role has also expanded a lot. So, I think that the IC community now is more in contact with the bigger studios, collaborating with them in establishing a better practice for us all. Now intimacy coordination is not just about the creative and finding that quality in the scenes that you're looking for. It's also an administrative role, a logistic role. So it has kind of become this, it's really that HOD, I think, over all the intimacy scenes in collaboration with all the other HODs and assistants and masterminds that are involved in the project. So I think that's like to have a mentor that can guide you through all of this, I think is really crucial. It's that there's a lot of responsibility too. Sometimes you really need someone who can check in on you and who you can offload to and just help you navigate, because we all we all, and even though we step in as professionals, we also step in as there's some parts of us that are always going to be our private, selves. And it's important to know what you are contributing to in a room, and also to learn how to navigate stepping away from that room and offloading everything that you yeah have been through somehow. Mm.
I just love what you mentioned there because although your role is to support others, ICs need support as well, right? That's crucial. And you want a production that really values that. And I'm
Mm.
happy that you seem to be finding it in your recent projects. Tell me, what does the word consent mean to you?
Yeah, I've been thinking about this a lot, and I never really find a simple explanation for it, because it's also such a complex concept. I think that I'm still practically discovering. But it's basically when I would say consent is basically when a yes is truly a yes and not corrupted by stress, fear, expectations, pressure, etc. It's like willingly or excitingly engaging in something, and to be able to have that honest communication. It's with your colleagues. So now I'm only talking about the professional aspect of our consent work, but then there's obviously also the consent that happens in our private personal or the relationship we have in our private realm. It's listening attentively. It's like taking responsibility over yourself and your colleagues, I think. Have you heard of the acronym FRIES? That is something that often comes up when you talk about consent. It's basically F stands for freely given, R for reversible, I for informed, E for enthusiastic, and S for specific. So it's freely given, reversible, informed, enthusiastic, and specific. So that's one of all the good explanations, I would say. Mm.
That's a really good one for people. And It's like funny that you put that in my mind now. Now when I hear fries, I'll have to like
Yeah.
research those definitions or the acronym again. But it's something that is important, I think, especially like when you're on a set and you want something to kind of trigger what you're looking for or what needs to be done before going into a scene. Tell me about Intimacy Collective India because that is something that you co-founded earlier this year.
Yeah, I think that the collective really came about when me and the intimacy coordinator Asta Khanna connected, and we were collectively thinking about what will be the best way forward in India. How can we establish best practice here? And we would just like, we have to gather people. We have to be many to establish this. So I think that's basically what, like, the intention behind the that's yeah the intention behind the collective is to find a way to establish best practice basically in the industry for team and for cast and for producers and directors. And so that it's wonderful. We're yeah we're also like already expanding. I think like more people are coming in. There's not only intimacy coordinators but also directors and anti-sexual harassment educators and experts on working with minors, etc. So yeah, it's we learn a lot from each other. We do, yeah. I love our group.
I think what you and your team are doing is so vital because in film industries, and I was just reading more about your work, like in India, maybe they have good intentions, but they have the right resources and they need that helping hand. So that's really what your collective is there to do. You share resources. You've been hosting events and talks as well. So tell me, for those at home who are confused, Sarah, they are based both out of Sweden and Mumbai, India, which I'm not sure that everyone knows. Were you kind of setting this up remotely with your team, or have you traveled back and forth? Are there restrictions right now?
Yeah, good question. We definitely set it up remotely. Like that happened in the middle of the pandemic. But since then, I've been a little bit back and forth. It's always a different thing seeing each other for real, but and also of course, working with actors in Mumbai, speaking to directors in Mumbai, that gives a completely different understanding, for me at least, yeah, about the work that we like. What's the next step basically? Yeah, checking in with people who are in the industry in different roles gives us a lot of insight.
And you must have a lot of insight, like experiencing both art scenes and cultures in India versus Sweden.
Yeah, do I don't know. Like, I think, to be honest, there are so many people on this globe that share, that have this thing of two living in two countries or in two contexts. Or like, I think that this is something that I love this question, because I think that it's actually quite rare only to have one country or one context. And so yeah, I think I'm quite normal in that case. And I love that richness about my life, also having having influences from all over the world. I think that that's really something that I want more of.
Yeah, you're
Also.
hungry to work in other countries as well in the future, I'm sure. You had a very busy fall winter 2020 because you were the IC on both Hooked, Sick, and Young Royals. Your good friend Lisa Ambjörn, the creator, head writer on both of these series. How did you end up being booked on both projects?
Yeah, so Sjukt was a project that was really heartfelt. Like it was a very personal story for Lisa, and we all wanted to be part of it. So when I got engaged with Young Royals, I was working. It's basically the same production company, so I was already working on Sjukt when I was approached for Young Royals. So that's the very simple explanation for it. Mm.
So Young Royals came first. When you heard that they were going on at the exact same time, did it prove a challenge in your mind, or were you just like ready to jump in and work with more actors and on more scenes?
Yeah, for Sjukt I was on set every day for the whole project, because I needed that on set experience, because I come from the performing arts sector. So that was a really a good thing for me. So I had a deal with the production manager Eifra, who said that whenever you have an intimacy scene in Young Royals, you can leave, but otherwise I want you here. So I kind of had to, negotiate a little at times, but I mean, um, it was really a learning experience for me, and coming to set for Young Royals was a break for me.
We will talk more about in depth in Young Royals. I just want to say it's funny because I feel like it's when you need to ask almost permission to go, like when you're a student to go off somewhere else, like on a class trip. You're like, I need to go to this project, but I'll be back soon, kind of thing.
Yeah, it was definitely that. But Ifra was a gem. They really support this work also. So I think that was one of the reasons why they gave me the freedom that I had. Mm.
So, how long have you known Lisa for?
Oh, I don't know exactly, but I think maybe for like 6, 7 years or something. And we actually connected through the dance community and common friends. So we have been growing alongside each other. Really. So yeah.
I think it's nice to have a friendship where you trust and respect each other as artists in your field because it makes working together all that much more enjoyable.
Yeah, definitely. But I must say that I have no best friend privileges when it comes to the season two. Lisa is very keen on keeping the secret, so I'm as excited to know what's gonna happen actually, as yeah, everyone else who has seen the series.
I'm sure that they keep the scripts and the plans in a lock and key. When they leave the writer's room at the end of the day, it stays in there locked only for them
Yeah.
to access.
Yes. Yeah, we're all very curious.
Let's talk about Young Royals though, because I know you mentioned being engaged and involved in a lot of the processes that's working with your directors, writers, producers, even costume department. So what was your experience like working with the team behind the scenes, and did it match your ideal working environment and communication style as an IC?
Yeah, I think that like we I must say that Young Royals was my second project as an intimacy coordinator, and the role has been developing a lot since. And I, as an intimacy coordinator, have been developing a lot since, I think. So now I'm maybe on my 15th project or so. So there's a lot coming. So I would say that when I look back, I would say that I was actually quite green when it came to the coordination part with the production team and the different the departments, like for example location, or uh, which or the admin. So the administrative and the logistic parts was if I would do Young Royals one again, that is something that I would have looked into. But then when it comes to the, you know, the creative collaboration with the directors and the performers, both Rosta and Erika gave me a lot of trust when it came to actually working with the cast, because in general the director is always present because we build everything on their vision. So but they were simultaneously shooting at the scenes. So with that said, I had them, you know, in my ear like this, and the cast and I, yeah. So we worked from their vision, but on a distance. So I'm very grateful for them, you know, opening the door for me and letting me in their room actually. I hope I did good enough for them.
I'm sure that you did. As you mentioned, that you put this on Instagram, that a lot of the IC scenes or intimacy scenes you worked on like ended up as promotional photos. So you hope that this is the start of like positive change and not just, you know, using photos for these scenes. But Roshta and Erica, you kind of touched on this earlier. You said they really inspired you in how they lead and how they have this creative vision. So is it possible for you to expand just a bit more upon that and what it was like working with them?
I think they're very, very clear. They have, you know, they're very good at communicating what they want out of the scene, and they really keep, you know, they have a very, very strong sense of details in the narrative that can be picked up later. And they're very calm, very friendly, very open, very attentive and intuitive. So yeah, that's it. I think I really think that yeah, it's a bless to work with leaders like that. Mm.
I think directors have to take note because there's leadership is one thing, but also you mentioned like being friendly, like having a warm persona on set because that makes everyone want to come together and build something beautiful. For those who aren't aware, what is the role of a costumes department in intimate scenes?
So an intimacy coordinator and the costume department collectively prep the safety costume, the intimacy garments together for the intimacy scene, and the same with the makeup department when it comes to, for example, merkins or, you know, covering tattoos. Can we have this type of choreography when, you know, can we actually move across their chest because there is a lot of makeup covering the tattoos over here. That could be a thing. So we have to adapt, you know, our work to their work and collaborate when it comes to garments and prosthetics or whatever it could be.
And like any costumes, like prosthetics and like intimate or modesty garments, they have to be fitted and customized as well, right?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, and I hope that is something that I think productions, when they budget and when they prep, rarely take into consideration. So this is something that actually costume and makeup have been, you know, secretly managing in the dark for a very long time, and they have a lot of knowledge when it comes to this too. So as an intimacy coordinator, I'm very humble, you know, to the experts in this department because they have so much of experience when it comes to this.
So do you remember meeting the main cast for the first time? Because sometimes I think it's rare on a project where you, as an intimacy coordinator, work with each and every single one, but you worked with all five of them.
Yeah, there was one point. That's the first time actually. This is a funny story, but it was like at one point it felt like, see if I get this right. It was like uh, Edwin Omar, Edvin Nikita, Nikita Malte, Malte Frida, and I just missed the Frida Omar connection for it becoming a whole, you know, a full circle of us working together from, you know, so yeah, it was insane. Like there was this, it felt like they all had intimacy scenes with each other, and So it could be, for example, that I worked with then Malte and Frida in one day, um, and then I worked with Edwin and Nikita one day. So we had, you know, all our routines and exercises established and a language established in both these groups. And then with Nikita and Malte came together, they had it already, although they hadn't worked together. So it was this really amazing experience of how nice it is to work with a big cast and to get time to rehearse and establish that communication together.
What did like pre-production look like for you in terms of any research and preparation, or just if not pre-production, like the beginning stages of working with your actors? Like you mentioned exercises, like what kind of discussions do you have without spilling all of your secrets as to like getting to meet an actor for the first time and getting to, you know their boundaries and their communication styles?
Yeah, I think every intimacy coordinator have their own practice, but it's important to establish a sense of what their rights is. Uh, why I am there as an intimacy coordinator, what I do as an intimacy coordinator. We could look into their characters, we could look into, the narrative, we could look into other preferences that they have, for example. And then when it comes to actually working, I think that is like, um, that is very much influenced by our previous conversations. So, and of course also the vision of the director and the whatever opportunities that the production can give us.
I wonder if it's like difficult sometimes for you because you mentioned, or I maybe we'll talk a bit more about this later, but budgeting, and there's not necessarily a lot of time budgeted into IC work. So for you, as someone who I imagine also wants to get to know some of these actors on a personal level, it must be difficult because you're working in such short time frames and you need to work on like intimate points. So is there any time to get to know one another, or is it all just kind of work when you're, given like 2 hours of time?
I think that the getting, I think it really depends, but I think that the getting to know each other can't be jumped. Like that, it's even more important to really settle into each other than to necessarily have a like it really depends from actor to actor. Some actors prefer just to dive into the work directly, and some just want to chat with you. So you have to have that fingertip sensitivity to what the situation requires, I would say.
That's a great answer because you really have to read the room, right? That's kind of
Mm.
what you have to be there for. Now, if you feel comfortable sharing, who was the most nervous or shy about heading into their scenes?
Yeah, I think that well, I would never talk specifically about any actor that I have worked with, or even any crew member. It might even be that and someone else is really really nervous, uh, but and I think I also rarely make that kind of comparison
Because
because
everyone's different and
yeah.
everyone has their own needs, and that's completely valid to have, right? New experiences for everyone.
Exactly, and it might be that a person is actually, so one person can be, carrying their emotions on the skin, and some can hide them inside, and they're impossible to read, but they're so you can't really. I don't think I make assumptions of what I actually see, because there might be a lot of underlying things. Another thing is also that. Showing, expressing that you're nervous or expressing vulnerability could also be a very nice way of saying I'm human, and I want I want us to help each other, and maybe even a way of, you know, trying to make your co-actor or the team member or someone else more comfortable by saying, this is freaking me out, you know. So to have, so it's really difficult to compare, I think. But yeah. Mm.
What I like about that is the whole, being nervous. I almost feel like that could also be something that's positive because, like, when someone is like comfortable or when they're expressing their emotions, it sometimes means that, it's good, it can be good nervous energy, I'm sure.
100%, 100%. It's also, nervousness also lies very close to excitement. So it's that, joy of actually creating that scene also often. Mm.
Now, what was your favorite scene to choreograph and work on and why?
Yeah, I think that it differs because everyone is I think all of them are my favorites because they have given me so much of learning and insight, I think. But if I would choose two, so one with Erika and one with Roshta, I would say the fish tank scene with Erika, because that was such a joyful experience. It was so much fun and focus on the narrative and what we want to, express in the scene. And I think it came out as the best example of how a really professional, workflow can create, it can liberate us creatively. And then with Roshta, rather, I think it's the scene with between Felice and August, the bad sex scene, because I think that me and Roshta really found each other in that moment. Also, I think we really completed each other in our characters, and we had a really good communication going on. And I mean, Malte and Nikita are also just amazing performers and a joy to work with. So yeah, a bless. Mm.
Well, we will talk a bit more about those scenes because I wanted to have a scene discussion to maybe get more of your insights and your preparation process. So we'll start with the Felice and August sex scene because I feel like that really broke down these ideals of sex being something that's glamorous and this perfect moment because for them it was the exact opposite. It was awkward. You could see they were not satisfied at all.
100%, yeah, definitely. And I mean, the intimacy scene that have been celebrated is the scenes between Wilhelm and Simon, naturally, because it's a love story and the focus is generally on them in the story. But I think that scene is really, yeah, it's just interesting yeah, I wish we could tell more stories about awkward sex that is not a an assault, like to tell stories about the bloopers.
Yeah.
We all
Like I think
experience.
it's something to say that it was raw, right? Like all of these scenes are kind of raw, but just in a different way that, like you mentioned, it isn't something that's assault. It's just something that's, it's there and this could happen every day. It's just something that we don't see as much of in like film and TV.
Exactly, how vulnerable we are. Especially, I think August in that scene was really vulnerable. Felice is a character that, if I my the way I read Felice, is that she takes what she wants.
She does have a bit of that quality to her, but I love how we have gotten to see her evolve throughout season one, especially on a personal level and with friendship. Felice touching herself while looking at photos of Wilhelm. Tell me, how do you work with an actor to reach that comfort level where they feel safe doing that in front of a close camera?
Yeah, I'm so happy that you bring this up, because I think that most productions neglect the intimacy scenes which include only one actor. They often see it as there has to be two parties or several parties involved for it to be an intimacy scene. But simulated masturbation is as or if not even more challenging for an actor, because you can't rely on your co-actor. You only have yourself in this scene. But it could be different. It really depends on the director's vision, whatever time you get, and the performer. But you work you work a lot with the body, you work with the character, and you work with a beginning and an end of the story, I would say.
No, yeah, that answered the question. And it's because it's something that's very exposing, right? So it's something that I think you have to work on, especially one-on-one. Let's move on to the horror movie night, because that was the first, I think you mentioned, choreographed kissing scene between Edvin and Omar as their characters. So what kind of preparation led up to that moment? Because it was also such a pivotal scene for that pairing in the show.
I hardly remember now. It's so long ago. So it's a bit blurry, but I remember we choreographed it. We even choreographed the length of the kisses. It was that choreographed, because we didn't we spoke about the scene. So me and Roshta, who directed the scene, we spoke about it, and agree. What was important to find was that quality of the kids not being confident, but being something that was a first time experience for them. And maybe in that age, you don't also know how much experience a person would have kissing another person. So I think that is the discussions we had. Basically, how experienced are they, how would this kiss look, how can we create that quality of nervousness and excitement.
Working with feelings, specific feelings and emotions, so you basically build choreography around that, is what you're kind of saying?
Yeah, we did, and I worked in other projects since that I think where actors have preferred working, being a bit more, um, working, having more. I don't want to say freedom, but to not set everything in stone. But my experience is that we often end up blocking it the same way as a choreography would be anyway. But yeah, there's just different directors and actors will want to work in a different way. But for us in Young Royals, choreography worked very, very well. And it also, I think I would say, it is the best way to keep everybody in the process safe.
I think because that way you're not kind of expecting any surprises, right?
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. You agree upon what's going to happen. That happens.
So the episode 4 or 5, the sex scene, the morning after the football field scene, I know you mentioned that there was a bit of a gray area here because, as we all know, Wilhelm was high just the night before, and you lose that capability to make conscious decisions. So what kind of discussions did you have with the directors and writers, and what you wanted to portray in this scene?
Mm. We dived into the discussion about what consent is and how we could create a dynamic between Wilhelm and Simon, which wouldn't be, yeah, like you say, a gray zone between, like, what was it? How can you actually consent if you're still high? Is he still high? So what we came up to was that somebody is gonna take initiative, it has to be Wilhelm, and he has to be the force behind this scene. The action has to come from him, and Simon is rather the receiver than the receiver rather than the giver, or the the one serving. So
Yeah, like the
uh,
initiator.
exactly. So yeah, he got the passive role. Meanwhile, Wilhelm was given an active role. So that's the best way we could come up with a solution for the problem. But it's a very interesting topic of discussion also, I think. So
I think it was Omar who also said in an interview, like with that specific scene, you had discussions with both him and Edvin, like individually, to really just let them know how their body might react naturally, and that during filming, it was okay for them at any point in time to stop filming, no questions asked.
yeah, that's a general thing actually that I talk to every actor about, and that I think that every intimacy coordinator, always take into account, because it's a very common fear among actors, not knowing how their body will react. There's a concept called arousal non-concordance, which is really interesting for everyone, I think, to look into. It is when what's happening in your mind is not matching what's happening in your body. So it could be that you're fully in character, you're fully simulating this, but your body is not experiencing that difference of what is actually real and what is fake. So you have an reaction in your body that is actually not matching your feelings or your intentions, and that's a very vulnerable position for every actor to be in. So it's important to bring that understanding into our practice, and for every actor to know that it's okay to take a pause and just get into your own space for some time.
Yeah, I like that. And it's important that they know sometimes people might feel scared to speak up and think, will I be a burden on this production if I halt the scene? But it's so important to know that they are doing what's right for them and that the production supports you.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, definitely. That's always a fear, to be that stick in the wheel, we say in Swedish, that kind of halts all the movement forward. I need a break. Okay, time is ticking. But I mean, that's actually the most productive way to go about it, and it usually saves a lot of time and effort in the end. Mm.
So
And we
the
care.
yeah, the scene that you mentioned, the fish scene,
Mm.
fans lovingly call it. Tell me a bit about the specific choreography and what you worked with, especially with the touch, because people have gathered that Wilhelm's love language is kind of touch. So I like that they spend a lot of time just holding each other during that scene.
Mm. Yeah, I just love that choreography. And I also love the collaboration between, our responsibilities, our departments, and the DOP department in this one, because we worked with choreography, our DOP could actually follow through, because he knew what would happen. So that was a very amazing experience for me. But we basically set this choreography the evening before. So we were shooting a scene in the morning, and then I stayed. Me and Omar, we hang out you could say, green room, and we were playing around with Instagram filters until Erika and Edwin came from set, and we choreographed the scene. So it was actually, this is the actions are not written in the script, but it's actually set on spot between, in conversation with Edwin, Omar, Erika, and me. And so I know that some people have said that it's improvised, but the improvised part of it, I think that when we came to set the next day, or it was Edvin who came up with the brilliant idea of naming the fishes in the tank after Omar's former band members. So that was an on-spot contribution to the script, basically. But it was not very improvised, but it was creative, 100%.
A very memorable contribution by Edvin for sure. But with like just with the two of them, they have such, I think, a gentle care in how they interact with each other, and that really shines through. And that includes in the change room scene, which you've spoken about on Instagram. So we won't go too in depth about that one. But I like that you all made the decision not to have a kiss there, because I think in that moment when they were talking about the video leak, like, did you just feel and work with the directors that it was right for them to just, they kind of locked feet and just sitting there with one another?
Yeah, we actually prepped the kiss. So me, Edvin, and Omar, we had our IC time. We call it intimacy time. We, set the consent of the day, went through the choreography, and a kiss was actually included in that choreography. But then when we came to set, director Erika said, it's not necessary. I don't want it. So we just focused on deepening that connection, of we haven't seen each other, we haven't touched each other for such a long time, and I just want to melt into you and become one with you and never let go of you. So I think that that was our inspiration for the scene, and why all the movement, the entanglement of body parts came alive and came about.
I think that that's so heartbreaking because we know what comes next. I don't want to let go of you. So I think people will probably talk about that. Why? Why did they let go? But you mentioned in your Instagram stories that there was a consent sequence for an intimacy scene that unfortunately didn't make the cut because we talked about the importance of consent and like that at times that verbal consent. Can you share any details on what that sequence was?
Yeah, it was a very, very short passage. It was in the fish tank scene, actually, that got cut off. But I trust the decision of the directors and the producers on this. I think that they have, they know what's best for the series, and perhaps in season 2 we'll get to add something.
Do you think that with a lot of things like verbal consent, just in film and TV in general, is it a lack of time that a lot of these maybe sequences can't be included?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think I see it more and more, and I'm scared of it becoming repetitive, uh, somewhat narratively. But I think we could also be more creative in how we, portray the seeking of verbal consent, or even like, this is something that I'm also very interested in when it comes to this the script writers. Let's get together, let's find 100 ways in which we can seek consent.
I think that's interesting on the writing part because I think even like Lisa mentioned that sometimes for her, it can be difficult writing intimate scenes because it's something that is so revealing. And that's why it's important that ICs and what they can bring to the table is also working with writers to see how they can further develop these scenes so that it matches, what the story they want to tell, but also something that promotes this culture of safety and transparency.
Yeah, I'm so happy you bring that up. Lisa has been such a big support in this. So she has even said, like, I'm not gonna write the intimacy scenes if there's not an intimacy coordinator on board. So and all, like, I see where Lisa's coming from, because when she writes, it is so clear. Like, it's never that experience of A and B has sex, it's really detailed. You have the beats in the script that you can just, like, it's so easy to choreograph Lisa's intimacy scenes, because you just, they just hit you. She's a brilliant writer of intimacy.
Can you imagine just working with A and B have sex? Like with the directors, you're kind of going like, no, we need a lot more to go go off of here.
Exactly, yes. And even when it comes to, other types of scene, like, yeah, and she's changing in the locker room, like, or he is, something. There might be, yeah, there just might be intimacy scenes that, uh, very good. They are examined by a doctor, like, what type of examination? What are we talking about? What type of touch? What type of physical contact or examination and exposure is happening here? So definitely, like, but this is no one's fault. This is just practice. I think that we have to we as an industry have to, yeah, just look into the mystics that we are working from, or I don't know, creating, and clarify ourselves a little more when it comes to these things. Mm.
What you mentioned is kind of like a perfect lead into what I wanted to talk about, which
Mhm.
is intimacy, intimate points. Like a lot of times it's just thought of as sex and nudity, but it can be in any form of touch and connection. Like we see that when Sara holds Felice's face and tells her that she's pretty, or Wilhelm putting his hand over Simon at the party when they're hiding, even August's uninvited arm around Felice on their way to class. So are these elements that you identify when you're doing your script breakdown on intimate points?
100%, yes. So some of them are kind of impossible to catch, because so much lies in the director's vision of the scene, and they're not in the script. But when they are, and when I sense, the subtext of the script, I always note them. And I think what's important then is that an intimacy coordinator is informed whenever there are changes in the scenes happening. So in my breakdown, I basically grade everything, or I make a comment on all the intimacy that I find. And that's a conversation to have with the production team, about which scenes that I'm gonna be part of, and which not. But if these scenes ever change in a later version of the script, there might be that things fall between chairs. So yeah, or tables. You say that in English? It fall between tables. Yeah. So it's yeah, so it's just important to yeah, have that I think and what we are working for is that intimacy coordinator is a given part of the production and the process, and is included in all the conversations, so that we can bring our expertise to this table. It doesn't necessarily mean that we will be on set for these scenes, but we can, yeah, help coordinate if we see that there's any risk involved. Mm.
I like that you're involved in like all these different conversations. And as you mentioned, that you kind of have to grade them because in terms of working with the budget, you do have to prioritize what scenes you will be working on. So naturally, those are the more maybe like the simulated sex scenes and the kissing scenes. But it's important to just note that these are intimate scenes as well, despite them, not having the same level of nudity. Now, what challenged you? What was the biggest challenge you faced when working on the set of Young Royals? I know a lot of it was probably fun and really rewarding work, but I'm sure there's challenges that you face on a daily basis, especially going from like rehearsals into day of shooting.
Yeah, I think accepting my limitations as an intimacy coordinator. That was the hardest part. I think there's always that. Yeah, you have to let go of a lot of um, um, like there's an element to every HOD or every leader that is on set, that you have a certain amount of control and responsibility, and at times you have to let that go, and accepting that you can only do so much is, I think, difficult for me. I wrote about that also in a story recently, that it's so important for me that when I'm on set, I step into my profession, and that distinction between the private and the professional is very, very important for an intimacy coordinator. But working with the Young Royals cast, I always bring a lot of Sara with me as well, because I don't care for this cast only as an intimacy coordinator, but also as Sara. So I think that letting go of things, letting go of responsibility, and yeah, that is a difficult thing for me. Mm.
Because you want to be this protector, right? But you can only do so much in like the time and space that you're given.
Yeah, definitely. Exactly. Yeah. It's good then to have a team that you trust, directors that you trust, etc., so that you can have that communication at least ongoing. Mm.
Now, tell me, how do you deal with changing needs in such a short period of time? Like, this isn't just specific to young boroughs, but in your experience working on sets, like when somebody, for all good reasons, because there's no wrong reasons, feels like they can't do something as rehearsed, maybe the day before or a couple days before, and they mention that on the day of check-in, like what is that kind of thought process and working with the behind the scenes team to make sure you're still being able to tell that story?
Right. I go, fun, good, thank you. Let's go. Let's create something new. What's important in the story? How can we tell this in a different way? Like, sometimes a no is the biggest opening for, a, a non a story that is not going to be cliche. So yeah, it's just I get super happy.
Because it's always fun to problem solve as well. Well, not like it's a problem, but just, kind of reimagining new ways of doing things.
Right. Yeah, you could definitely, like, that's definitely, there's a connotation to problem as problem being negative, but conflict is also the thing that develops us the most, right? So I really think that we should, problem and conflict is really two words that I see as super positive words also. That's when we expand.
As
Mm.
purely a fan or viewer of the show, which was your favorite scene and why?
Oh, there's one scene that shook me really when I saw it first. I had no insight in that scene whatsoever. And it's the scene between Simon and his father. The first sequence, all of that I suppose was shot on the same day, but the first sequence, there's so much subtext in their eyes. And yeah, I think that really, really, I actually have a similar experience also with a close person in my life. That's and yeah, so that I related a lot to that scene, and I'm grateful for Omar and I don't know the name of our
I think
amazing
it's Leonard Turfelt.
Lennart. So Lennart and Omar, thank you for that scene. It shook me and it pierced me.
Like, I like that we focus in on their faces so closely. Like, you can see in their eyes.
100%. It was, yeah, and the way it was shot also straightforward. Like there was something with that I got really inspired.
Now, do you have anything that you would like to see specifically in terms of storylines or plot points, separate of course, anything going on in the writer's room, but something that you might like to see explored just because you have an attachment to the stories and the characters?
Right. So given that I have no insight in this writing process, what
100%. We'll make that.
I
It's
have
like we have to make that clear
yeah,
all the time. Even the actors, I think, have no idea what's going
no,
on.
we don't know what's gonna happen. Like it's completely secret. But there is a huge request from the fandom of a forehead kiss. So if I get the opportunity, I promise to deliver that.
But you cannot promise if it will be between Wilhelm and Simon.
No.
That casting notice that went out, it sent everyone into a
Yeah,
frenzy.
yeah, me
The,
too.
the casting notice, for those who don't know, but I'm pretty sure you do, people think it's like some another love interest for Simon to kind of be that, that third party, make it a make it a triangle that nobody asked for
Yeah,
kind of thing.
yeah. We have to be kind towards Lisa and her team now because there's a lot of pressure on them.
There
They,
is.
if they add another love interest, many hearts are gonna be broken.
But who knows? It could be worth it if it's pieced back together. So I guess time will tell everyone.
Definitely tell.
So we got that as an IC though. Sarah promised for a forehead kiss, a forehead kiss.
Yes, if I get the opportunity.
So you are a hero to this fandom, not only for your work as an IC, but for the behind the scenes content you've been feeding everyone, the questions that you've been answering. To hear about the impact that this show has had on people worldwide, is it still surreal to know that you played a part in this?
Yeah, I'm still not understanding. Like like if that's true, if that's true, it's insane. Like yeah, for me to well, like as soon as I got involved in this project, I knew that it was going to be big because I saw the connection that the cast had, and the script and the writers and the team that is involved. Everything from lightning designers to costume to I mean, it's I knew from the start that it was going to be big, but then I think everyone who has been communicating with us and you know yeah, just getting back to us after the release of this, I think it just added another layer for us also of in terms of importance. It's such a privilege. Like this is, I know that no one of us take this for granted, and we really want people to know how much it means to us that you watch a series that we produced or created with our with our yeah, we did our best.
I feel like emotional because you're getting emotional.
yeah, definitely. Like I can't really like I'm not understanding, and when I try to grasp it, it's just like, but yeah, we did our best, and if this is and if this means something to somebody, like that is the biggest gift. Mm.
I think that you should all be very proud of the work that you did on the show. And specifically with Young Royals, I know it's a story that it's so aligned with your values because you advocate for diversity, expanding perspective on gender and sexuality. So this show really ticked off all those boxes for you.
Yeah, it feels like I'm creating something in my own world, you know. That is like the best feeling as a creative, not having to step in, not because you always, I think, when you are queer, or when you come from an experience which is not necessarily normative, and you're in a position of constantly adapting and having that microaggression directed towards you. And I hope that the community watching Young Royals can feel normal. You know.
And feel included. And I think that they have, because just off the top of your head, like what are some messages or notes that you've seen from this fandom and what it's meant to them?
Oh, I think that what has touched me and what really stayed with me was the appreciation of the intimacy being so soft. I think that is something that it made me very, very happy, because we often see intimacy being, loaded with, something aggressive, or, that there is some, touch, or, yeah, connection there that is, you know, unkind somehow, that there is some kind of power play, or, I mean, there could also be, but I think that is something that people have picked that up, that the intimacy is more, more about something that is, exists in the atmosphere and between two people, rather than in the body, in the action of the body. I think that is something that has really, yeah, made me happy, because I think that is something that I've been missing when it comes to intimacy storytelling, that I wanted, at least, to contribute with. Mm.
And I love that they're intuitive to pick up on these little nuances as well. As we kind of get to a close, sets are known for having stunt coordinators, movement coaches, and choreographers nowadays. Why do you think that intimacy coordination or intimacy, yeah, IC work is still a bit of a taboo in this realm and as a key position in film and TV productions?
Hmm. I think people are kind of uncomfortable talking about intimacy. I think it's something that naturally brings people to the private. There, people can be very comfortable talking about, other things, because it doesn't necessarily um, touch upon their own experiences, or and I think intimacy is, yeah, it's just very, we all bring ourselves into this work. You know, it's kind of a, I think, and I think that not necessarily, telling our own story, but we work through our bodies and our emotions and our minds, and we relate to these very, very, um, and these moments are so loaded, I think, that it's like, yeah, we can't help but, rel yeah, they just spark some, they connect to our own memories, I think. And when we get into that realm, it can trigger trauma. It could, yeah, it's just the getting into the private, I think, rather than being clearly in the professional. And I think that we need to start seeing these scenes as work, so like we do with stunt scenes, because we don't necessarily have to, yeah, it's just like, I think that would be my answer, that there's a lot of taboo, there's a lot of trauma, there is a lot of confusion about the private and the professional when it comes to these scenes. So yeah, cut the long answer and take the short one.
I liked hearing though that thought process, because it's even like it's difficult to put into words. I think just encompassing it, it's scary for a lot of people to think about, but it kind of circles back to, we were talking about writers and like Lisa earlier, and just how beneficial an IC can be, because what they're that's what they're there for, to also kind of help people not necessarily go through that trauma. That's also what like a therapist might be beneficial on productions nowadays, but just in terms of making people feel safe. And that includes the writers and the directors and anyone on set, basically.
100%. Definitely. Yeah. I think an intimacy coordinator really, really creates that professional environment for these scenes. And if an in, the I think that intimacy in general could be loaded with a lot of taboo, but I'm seeing more and more also that it's becoming more of a given. I think.
Now, for those interested in IC as a profession or just learning more about your work, like where and how would you recommend they start?
I would definitely recommend visiting my collective's website and check in on the list of qualifications that an intimacy coordinator needs. And there's a lot of organizations now also giving training, and not necessarily intimacy coordinating organizations. It could also be, for example, I had my first mental health first aid certification through a university in Sweden, a medical university in Sweden. So you could find different ways of, ticking those boxes. I think being certified by one organization is not necessarily going to be the right way forward for everyone, because you might not be located in your city. It might be very expensive. You might come from a different background where you're not able to access these trainings. But to reach out to intimacy coordinators, start be creative in how you build your qualifications, and continue to engage in the conversation, because the profession is evolving quickly.
I also feel like just important, like let's say, like you mentioned, qualifications, look at what's offered locally, especially in, local film industries that people might want to be involved in. But things like conflict resolution, sensitivity training, like these are basically mandatory for you to have. So those ones might be a bit more widely offered, I'm thinking.
Yes, exactly, definitely. And then you have the specific process, the workflow, the work with the experience you should have in movement and somatic practices, or directing, acting, modesty garments, etc. So definitely writing protocols also, I think, doing risk assessments, all of these things is something that you could definitely find from the international organizations that provide courses on this.
Well, Sarah gave you all a very good head start to what you might need to look for. I think it's great that production companies like Netflix are kind of taking the lead with ICs, with Young Royals. We have Sex Education, Bridgerton, just to name a few. So it's about time that other like cable networks take note and make this a mandatory position in film and TV productions. Is there any note that you want to add on where you think the work and of ICs are headed within the next few years?
Yeah. I'm also very, very happy for actually Netflix being a leader when it comes to developing the IC practice, and or actually giving intimacy coordinators opportunity to collaborate with each other. Kudos to the Netflix HR department in Europe for arranging a lot of moments for intimacy coordinators to get together and expand together. I think that my conversation with Netflix so far has been is how intimacy coordinators can actually contribute to scenes that are not necessarily ticked as intimacy scenes, but scenes that are heavily charged with emotionally. or heavily challenging emotionally, that the structure that an IC provides, pre-production, on set, is very beneficial for the team, for the cast, for the directors to meet to meet whatever we want the scene to be. So I think that is something that an intimacy coordinator, we're moving into that also, but we'll see where it's heading.
I think that's wonderful news, though, for progress, and will open more doors and opportunities for all of you. I'd like to thank you so much for taking the time to chat and providing all this helpful information and what we can think about now and when we're watching film and TV at home.
Thank you. I am the one who is the privileged one here. Thank you so much for inviting me to share and talk. And I just I'm looking forward to all the interviews that you will have in the future.
Thank you. Our signature question for you: if you could be any ice cream flavor, which would you be and why?
I think vanilla. Very basic, very simple, goes well with all the other ice creams. Smooth, and it could also surprise you sometimes.
I like it. Thank you again, Sarah, for taking the time.
Thank you so much, Chloe. We'll talk again.
Yeah, make sure to catch Sarah's work in Young Royals. Season 1 is out now on Netflix. We will be posting their website link below, so stay tuned for upcoming projects. A lot in the works, and we will see you next time.